it all because there's one other fundamental factor that we're not taking account of in terms of these creative metrics. In fact, there's several factors, but the main one that we're not taking account of is actually that initial reach. So how many people have actually the ad's been seeded with them and they're willing to pass it on? But essentially, there's a good correlation there, and what's more, it also validates research that we did back in 2007, where we are looking qualitatively at what makes a viral video travel. And in this case, I'm afraid it is another acronym, the criteria were legs. If a video was laugh out loud funny, if it was edgy, if it was gripping, or for that matter, it was sexy, then people were likely to pass it on one to the other. And so if we now color code some of those executions by whether we estimate them to have high legs or low legs, high legs being the sort of orangey buff color and low being the blue color, you can see that, again, that's validating the qualitative work that was done back in 2007, that if your ad has legs, that it's edgy, gripping, laughing, makes people react in that way, then they'll be more willing to pass it on. And that, of course, is not directly measured by our creative viral potential measure there, but it is related to it, because remember, one of the metrics that goes into that prediction is whether they're willing to pass it, or whether people state that they're willing to pass it on. More recently, the work I've been describing was done last year. More recently, we tested 8 viral executions. Now, some of these are TV commercials, some are not. So hopefully you can read that. We have Walmart Clown, you have the Coca-Cola Happiness Machine, E-Trade's Baby Girlfriend, which has made the news recently, Snickers Betty White, Old Spice, The Man Your Man Could Smell Like, Audi Green Police, Google Nexus One Ninja Unboxing, and Carl's Jr. with Kim Kardashian. All of these executions perform really well on those basic creative viral potential metrics. Interestingly, there are differences between them. So the top 4, for instance, have pretty broad appeal and perform extremely well. Audi, Google Nexus One, and Carl's Jr. tend to be pretty segmented in terms of their appeal. Not surprisingly, women didn't react terribly well to Kim Kardashian, but men did. And of course, Carl's Jr. is also a regional brand, so that too may have an influence on the segmentation of who found that ad appealing. Google Nexus One very much appealing to a younger audience, and quite frankly, maybe outside of the bounds of our sample that we used for this research, because it was a fairly general sample. I think the really interesting execution here is this one, because this one managed to engage both men and women and comes through very strongly in terms of the weekly viewing rate. But the interesting thing is you'll see, we're going to show the difference between men and women in terms of the way they react to the execution. You'll see that women are immediately engaged by it, and the guys are sort of like, I'm not sure I'm comfortable with this. What's he really saying? By the time we get to the end of the execution, as you'll see, they're kind of on board.
Hello, ladies. Look at your man. Now back to me. Now back at your man. Now back to me. Sadly, he isn't me. But if he stopped using lady-scented body wash and switched to Old Spice, he could smell like he's me. Look down. Back up. Where are you? You're on a boat with the man your man could smell like. What's in your hand? Back at me. I have it. It's an oyster with 2 tickets to that thing you love. Look again. The tickets are now diamond. Anything is possible when your man smells like Old Spice and not a lady. I'm on a horse.
Isn't it amazing? You know, it's just like, oh, this is okay. This is actually funny. I'm allowed to laugh at this now, instead of being threatened by this rather attractive-looking guy on the screen. Anyway, so that is a very brief run through the presentation. conclusions I draw from this is that, there's one critical view for viral viewing, and that is that creativity still rules. To make people want to watch your video online, you're going to have to work to a much higher standard than TV. An ad which might be watched in a paid placement on TV is going to get ignored online. And a large proportion of viral video viewing can be predicted based on the target audience response. But a critical thing that I would note is we are looking here at whether or not people will view a video. Does it promise that enough that they're going to look at it and then they're going to be willing to pass it on? If we want that exposure to do something for the brand, then it must leave some impression that's related to the brand. And then the other thing that doesn't seem to have got much airtime is that reach counts too. Just as when we're putting something on TV and we're buying GRPs to gain reach, we need to think about how we're going to seed this execution in a way that will gain that initial reach and then be passed on. Because I think there's a belief in people's minds, let's put it on Facebook, let's put it on Twitter. But actually, those aren't one big mass. We don't gain access to all the millions of people who use Facebook simply by seeding our execution there. Because actually, Facebook is made up of millions and millions of micro networks. Somehow, you've got to get someone in each of those networks to see an execution in order to start the ball rolling to get something to go viral. Other things that we found, factors like searchability, ad naming, being part of an ongoing campaign also have an influence on whether or not people are willing to view your ad. But critically, one of the things that Duncan Watts and his colleagues found was if you want to get bonus views, the more widely you seed it, the more likely people are to look at it, irrespective of creative power. Which leaves one other question unanswered. Why do Brits keep using animals in their ads? And you know what? A US advertising icon might actually have the answer to this, so I'm going to leave you with this little video.
I'll tell you why. Because people trust advertising icons. Some bloke tells you to go to geico.com and you're like, really? And just who might you be?
Simples.
So there you have it. People trust advertising icons, not just some bloke. Thank you very much for listening.